When discussions around Liz from IVE and her visual transformation extend beyond observation into fan reaction, the tone often shifts from curiosity to something far more intense. And in many corners of the internet, that intensity has unfortunately turned into criticism and even outright hate, particularly centered around the narrative that she is being turned into Jang Wonyoung, a claim that has sparked a wave of comments accusing her of cloning Wonyoung's look or losing her individuality. And while some of these remarks are framed as concern, a large portion crosses into unfair judgment, where Liz becomes the target of frustration, not just about her own appearance, but about broader industry patterns. And this is where the conversation becomes less about her as an individual and more about what she represents within a system shaped heavily by Starship Entertainment and the expectations placed on idols, because the idea of Wonyoungification has taken on a life of its own, turning into a shorthand for any perceived similarity in styling, makeup, or overall image, even when those similarities may simply reflect shared trends or coordinated group aesthetics rather than deliberate imitation. Yet the emotional weight of that narrative has real consequences, as it places Liz in a position where she is criticized for changes that may not even be fully within her control, while also indirectly reinforcing the idea that there is only one correct visual standard within the group, embodied by Wonyoung, and this dynamic reveals a deeper issue within fandom culture, where comparisons between members can become so constant and so intense that they overshadow individual identity, reducing each member to how closely they align with or deviate from a perceived ideal. And in this case, that ideal is Wonyoung herself, whose image has, over time, become synonymous with the modern K-pop beauty standard: slim proportions, polished elegance, and a carefully curated femininity that is both aspirational and relentlessly maintained. And while this status brings admiration and recognition, it also comes with a significant psychological and professional burden, because being positioned as the standard means existing under a microscope where every detail is scrutinized and every deviation is noticed, creating an environment where maintaining that image requires continuous effort, discipline, and likely a degree of pressure that is difficult to fully grasp from the outside. And this is what some fans refer to when they talk about the mindset or mental toll associated with embodying such an ideal, not in a literal or derogatory sense, but as a reflection of how consuming that role can become, as it risks overshadowing other aspects of Wonyoung's identity, including her personality, skills, and the hard work she has put into her career. Because when someone is constantly praised or criticized primarily for their appearance, it can create a feedback loop where that appearance becomes the focal point of their public identity, sometimes at the expense of everything else they bring to the table. And this is not unique to Wonyoung, but is particularly pronounced in her case due to how strongly her image has been marketed and received. And when that image then becomes a reference point for others within the same group, whether intentionally or not, it can create tension both within the fandom and potentially within the group dynamic itself, because even if the members themselves are supportive of one another, as they often appear to be, the external narrative of comparison and replacement can introduce unnecessary pressure, as fans project ideas of competition or hierarchy that may not reflect the reality of their relationships. And this is where the possibility of conflict, or at least discomfort, becomes relevant, not necessarily in the sense of open disagreement between members, but in the subtle ways that constant comparison can affect how individuals are perceived and how they perceive themselves, especially in an environment where image is so closely tied to success. And while there is no concrete evidence to suggest that Liz and Wonyoung themselves experience conflict over these issues, the persistence of these narratives within the fandom raises questions about how such discourse might impact them if they are aware of it, as idols are often more attuned to public opinion than fans might assume, even if they do not directly address it. And this awareness can add another layer of pressure, as they navigate not only their own careers, but also the expectations and interpretations imposed upon them by others. And in the case of Liz, the hate she receives for allegedly resembling Wonyoung highlights how quickly admiration can turn into criticism when fans feel that individuality is being compromised, even if that perception is subjective or exaggerated. And it underscores the need for a more balanced approach to these discussions, one that acknowledges the realities of styling, industry standards, and personal evolution without reducing individuals to comparisons or treating change as something inherently negative. Because ultimately, both Liz and Wonyoung are navigating the same demanding system, one that rewards visual appeal while also placing immense pressure on those who embody it. And rather than framing their similarities as a problem or a competition, it may be more constructive to recognize the complexity of their positions and the multiple factors that shape how they are seen, both by fans and by the industry itself.